He's that guy on, I bet you've seen it. Oh, hey there. How you doing there? I'm just from the Midwest. I've got a little clip on YouTube and yeah. And he's got tons and tons of followers.
Wow.
And he grew up here in Elm Grove. And he wrote a book. And so I'm narrating that book now. It's hilarious.
What's the book about?
The Survival Guide to the Midwest.
Oh, okay.
So introducing anybody who's not from the Midwest, or if you're from the Midwest, like all the stuff. Midwest nice. I compliment you on your shirt, and you go, "Oh, it's 20% off. Thanks."
Yeah, and the Midwest goodbye. That surely has to be in there.
Oh my God, there's like 2 chapters on that one already. Yeah. Trying to leave your parents' house without getting them upset. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So normally, I guess I start off by giving people the tips on what they should and shouldn't do to make the podcast go smoothly and the audio sound good. But since you already do a lot of audio, you don't need to know.
Please tell me. I'm just learning audio, so
okay.
I need to hear it all.
Well, it's basic stuff, but usually people still do it anyway. For instance, table touching.
Oof, yeah.
People do that a
I
lot.
had a guy with chains on his arms that was clanging the whole time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like a bracelet.
Yeah, or like fidgeting with things. I had this one episode where I was recording with somebody, and it was not in person. It was over like Zencaster or some online podcasting service. So, and we didn't do video on, so it was just like a phone call basically. And the whole time they were playing with something like some sort of office fidget spinner, stress ball kind of gadget, and I could hear it the whole time. And I think I edited it out of the final audio, but the whole time I was like, kind of wanted to say, like, can you not do whatever you're doing right now? But I didn't want to be rude.
Midwest nice.
Yeah, it was just this, right. It's like this metal sound that was kind of just coming in and out every couple minutes. Yeah, so touching the table or your surroundings, especially the microphone. Although these ones are pretty nicely foamed up, so it doesn't actually make any sound when you do it. Those ones are just, like the metal casing, it's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
And, need to drink anything, do it when we're not talking. Just take a little drink break, so I don't have somebody's drinking sound going on. Always talk directly into the microphone, 1 to 2 fists away from your mouth. I guess more importantly, sit in a position that's comfortable with you. So that's because this is a problem I have a lot too. Is somebody, I tell them to talk close to the microphone, but then over the next hour, they kind of find a position that's good for them. So then they're like this, and then the audio is drastically different from
minute 22 on. Yeah.
That's basically about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only other thing I say is swearing is okay.
Yeah, swearing's okay. Yeah.
For the first 6 episodes, every time someone would swear the first time, they'd be like, "I can swear, right?
Yeah.
Is that okay?"
Yeah, I get that sometimes too. People are like almost say it and they take it back. I just say whatever you want. I don't.
Fuck it.
I don't have any sort of reason to disallow people from swearing.
You got a children audience?
Not intentionally, if they exist. So I don't think I have a children audience. Actually, looking at the statistics for my audience, it's mostly people in their 20s, and second mostly people in their 30s. So
how do you get that data? Does your podcasting service give that to you?
Yeah, Spotify gives you that data. Yeah, I guess that's just data from Spotify, so it's not the whole amount of data. For instance, I don't know that from Apple Podcasts. Although I just don't go on Apple Podcasts very often, so it might give me that data. I just haven't looked at it. But the place I put my podcast up that then gets sent out to everywhere else on the RSS feed is Anchor. It's just a free podcasting service.
We use Libsyn.
Yeah, and Anchor is like part of Spotify.
Oh.
They're like owned by Spotify or whatever. It's like Spotify's podcasting service. So then through that, where I publish my podcast episodes, it tells me statistics like the location of my listeners and by percentage, and their ages and gender and.
That's detailed. We just have daily downloads. That's it.
Yeah, that too, and like rankings of, episodes by popularity and stuff like that, and then graphs of
who's the most popular
listens over time. The most popular episode is the one with my brother, which is episode 20, and it was called Reality, Perspective, and Horror, some combination of those words in some order. I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because he has a lot of friends, so like just everybody that knows him has listened to it or something like that. Yeah, that one has the most. And it used to be by a wide margin, but the other episodes are catching up to it over time. So, yeah. So I already started recording. I usually record several minutes of preamble in case, I don't know, we actually start talking in the middle of it or something.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard you had a lot of people in the Philippines listen.
Apparently, yeah.
That really cracks me up.
Last I looked, it was 8% of my listeners. I don't know why.
I really wonder if that's Filipino kids wanting to know what American regular people are like, or if that's some crazy farm that's like clicking on stuff and somehow they get counted in their counts and downloads.
It could be through advertising, because I have done advertising for the podcast through Facebook, just my Facebook page for the podcast.
Uh-huh.
I didn't specifically target the Philippines, though, but maybe it's got sent to Filipinos.
Maybe that's your ideal market. Maybe you're all wrong being in the U.S.
Maybe I should,
blast Philippines.
Only
the
send
Regular
it to the
People
Philippines.
podcast.
Yeah. Welcome to the Regular People podcast. I'm Wade Allen, and today I'm joined by Will Koebel.
Hello, world.
Hi. I think this is going to be episode 31 now. I have one most recent episode that I recorded but have not uploaded yet. That's episode 30. And that one I was recording in my new apartment where the audio quality is questionable. Or at least maybe questionable. I haven't actually listened to it yet. I haven't done any of the editing on it yet, so I don't know. But when I recorded a video in my apartment last week, the audio was I fixed it in post, but it's still kind of bad. It's like very echoey, a lot of reverb because there's high ceilings. So I have to figure out a way, either get those microphones that like clip onto your shirt, so the microphone's real close to my mouth, or
lapel mics,
yeah, put up some of these that we have in the studio right here, foam noise cancel, like absorbers, whatever they're called, in my house. I don't know.
Couple suggestions for you there. Whatever you do, don't buy the ones on Amazon that come in like the 50 pack of shrink wrapped and they're really tiny.
50 pack, wow.
Yeah, they're 1x1 black squares. You're supposed to put them up in your apartment and it blocks out sound. They do not work. Do not.
Already tried that?
Already tried that.
I thought for a second you were talking about 50 pack of lapel mics. Like, wow, that must be expensive for 50 lapel mics. But yeah,
$3,000 invest.
50 pack of noise absorbers. Yeah. See, I don't buy from Amazon regardless.
Good man.
But yeah, even still, when I see things that are high quantity and probably cheap, like I'm sure it is on Amazon, it's always a little bit suspicious.
Tip off.
Yeah. But anyway, in this episode, we're going to be talking about podcasting and politics and whatever else may come up. But before we get into that, why don't we start where we always start on this podcast, with an introduction to you, Will. You could tell me and also the listeners about whatever it is you want, but I'll give you some guidelines that you can choose to grab whichever one you want. Like your life in the past 5 years, what you've been up to, what your ideas have been and how you've changed, perhaps, maybe what you've been working on, like with your passions or professionally, that kind of thing, so people can get to know you as a person.
That's cool. I like that question. I never know how to start podcasts, so this is I'm going to take notes and stick this in my back pocket. Last 5 years, I guess I've been going to UWM graduate school for the last 3.5, 4 years now. I'm in electrical engineering there. I'm going to graduate with a master's in that this coming fall, December. Came to UWM, I don't want to say broken, but not really fantastic. Had some weird headaches and a little health thing. And then came here and it was kind of a new chapter on life. And so I've been in Milwaukee. I've kind of made it my home these last 3.5 years. And really finding a place, I don't want to use the word community 1,000 times, but it feels kind of right for this one. I'm building a little community. I'm in River West. I've got friends that feel great to have. Narrating books I was telling you about earlier at the Central Library from Milwaukee. Started a podcast, which I think we're going to be kind of talking about today.
Right.
And so I guess the ideas that have changed a lot are like getting creative and knowing that you need to be creative. And you need to express yourself in some way, shape, or form, whether that be music, that be podcasting, that be art, that be being funny, a comedian. You just got to find some way to express yourself. Otherwise, all the stuff inside of you bubbles up and who the heck knows what happens after that.
No, I agree with that for sure. Always trying to find a project to be working on, even if maybe sometimes they don't complete them. But just always having some sort of creative outlet, basically at all times, has been very helpful for me over the past like 10 years or so.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And the not finishing sounds very close to home.
Yeah, it happens too often. Although, I don't know, like I used to beat myself up much more about not finishing things, but now I think the ratio of finished to not finished is much better. Where it's like maybe everything that I put aside and then come back to a long time later or still have yet to come back to, it's like, well, I finished all these other things, so it's not like I'm just kind of wasting my time like with everything I'm doing, just sometimes wasting my time.
And I like to think when they're not finished, you still learn skills.
That's true.
You still learn how to do it.
You still gain from them. And yeah, you realize like maybe you didn't know how to do, what was too difficult, or like you still learned things that you can actually use from there. Some projects that I've tried to take on, I just realized were like way too big.
I know, you're like really hitting home with me right now. I'm realizing I keep trying to write papers. So I'm doing energy engineering, and I would like to be a public service commissioner. I'm going to put this out in the world and what's it called? Manifest it. I'd like to be the public service commissioner of Wisconsin. And so like it's energy policy. And so these last 3 years, every semester I take like either a politics class or a economics class, like energy economics, things like that, and then try to write a paper. And I try to like bite off way more than I can chew and try to make it like a real journal article, like someone would publish in a journal. Yeah. But like you think about it, and like as time goes on, I realize like that takes 2 years of like just dedicated work on one journal article to get that to a publishable space. Wow. And so I'm trying to do that in like 4 months, 6 months. And I would just beat myself up at the end when I like had a good outline and it looked all right, but it didn't look pretty, and no one would ever publish it. And I don't even feel good putting it up on like a ResearchGate, which is a open source. Anybody can publish anything there. Then you can look at anybody's articles up there. I don't even feel good about putting most of them up there because it's just not quite there yet. Yeah. But in that same vein of it, I don't really beat myself up about it anymore. Like I learned so much while doing those things and got to read those research skills, even just how to write a paper, an odd skill that you have to learn how to do.
Yeah, I mean, useful for that kind of thing. One thing about writing papers that I was always annoyed with in high school and somewhat in college too is like, when am I going to need to do this? Like, why is this a useful skill? It's useful in the academic field, but if that's not where you're going for the rest of your life, like, why is this a skill that I need to have? It's still come in handy though with like script writing and that kind of thing, but I don't know, I think that's probably more along the lines of a creative writing course and that kind of thing than it is along academic journal writing.
I might push back and play devil's advocate a tiny bit that the logical structure of it.
Right.
Like structuring a whole argument into a paper, intro, middle, conclusion. It's pretty good for the brain. Useful.
Right. Yeah. No, I'd agree with that there. And also what you're saying just then reminded me of the flip side of these things of not finishing projects. And that is, we can't let like perfection be the enemy of progress, or whatever, perfection be the enemy of like getting something done in the first place. I struggle with this, and I have a few friends who really do, where it's like, yeah, you have this thing, you don't feel comfortable putting it out into the world because you just don't think it's good enough. It doesn't meet your own standards. But it's like at some point you just got to do it. You just got to put this stuff out there.
That's a thought that I've come to believe so hard. If you're going to start something, just start it. If you start it 3 months from now, 6 months, 10 years, you're going to start at the same place. You're going to be the same level of whatever you're going to start at whenever you start it. Yeah. So don't think things are magically going to get better in 3 months, 6 months. Just start it.
Yeah.
You're going to be what you are no matter what.
Before starting this podcast, there was a different podcast I wanted to make with my friends, and we recorded a few episodes, but never published them, or I never really even edited them. I was like,
these are going to be so valuable one day.
Yeah. I don't think they're even. Yeah. No, I've listened to them recently. Like, these are bad. But
what is it about?
It was.
Sorry, I'll let you tell your story.
It wasn't about anything really. It was kind of similar to this podcast where it's not about anything. It's just random, except the difference was it was not rotating guests. It was just me and him talking about our lives and whatever camaraderie we have. Because we would have really good conversations all the time. So we just figured we would record them.
I have a friend like that.
Yeah. But then
your friend isn't Aaron, is it?
No.
Okay, good. I was like, that's my friend I do that with.
No, his name was Miguel. And yeah, and I didn't publish that. And I was like, I want to have like 5-10 of these in the chamber already. so that I can not like, I don't know, waste any time or like have these long delays or whatever. And the podcast never got made at all. And it probably would have been a better learning experience if I would have at least put them out there for anybody to look at. Or with like writing. That's happened to me a lot with like writing too. I used to write a bunch of short stories, and I wanted to be an author, and I still kind of do, but that's more of a, after I get successful on some other track, then I'll switch to being an author.
That's my daydream too.
Because getting successful on the author track, that seems like very daunting.
Your chances are pretty low. Yeah. And I realized that all these authors have been writing since they were like 4 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I just started picking it up when I was like 19 or 20, and I liked reading it. I liked reading a bunch as a kid, but to do it, it's a craft. It really is a craft to write a novel, to write stories.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that authors usually talk about is like the vast amount of rejection that it takes before you have your like first success, or like acting or whatever it is. There's a lot of that kind of thing, but you can't have that rejection if you reject yourself first and don't let anybody else reject you, because you don't even show up to the audition. You don't even write the thing. You don't even show somebody else your written work or whatever it is that you've done. You have to get feedback from the rest of the world. And I think that's more important than just deciding that your thing isn't good enough, so you just don't even put it out there in the first place.
That reminds me of a book I'm listening to right now. Brene Brown. You ever listen to her?
No, I'm not.
Oof, somebody's gonna go, oh yeah, I listened to her. She's all about vulnerability.
Okay.
And this sounds like vulnerability, where it's like, let yourself be vulnerable to the world for them to give you feedback, and then you can build yourself off of that feedback.
Yeah. So that's what I've been trying to do a lot lately, trying to finish most of my projects just for the sake of improvement or whatnot. So yeah, you said that the past 3.5 years you've been in Milwaukee. Where were you before that?
Asheville, North Carolina, and then Milwaukee right before that, and then so it was a rotational job. It was one of those leadership development operational programs, and so you rotated around for 3 years doing different jobs. First one was manufacturing engineer. Second one was application engineer, so like actually designing the equipment, gear is what we call them. And then last one was like a sales post, so we actually like sold some of the equipment itself.
So did you get an undergraduate in engineering then?
Yeah, yep, mechanical engineering.
Oh, mechanical, okay. Yeah, I've got a lot of engineers in my classes. Seems like
Watch out for 'em.
I'm the only one who's not an engineer in the classes that I'm taking.
Yeah, you're taking physics. You're taking the class. You're taking the non-get paid way to be an engineer.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Although there are not as many jobs in physics as there are in engineering, but like this is one factory that's like employee owned, and it's Wisconsin, and they make kind of cool stuff. And they've got, I don't know, probably 80% engineers on their team, but then they've got like 20% physicists. They want those too. So I hope that there's some place for me. Although I don't know, I guess I'm not going for physics. Probably a bad thing to do, just generally like not have a solid plan, but I'm not going into physics because I specifically want a physics job or like to be a physicist, but I don't know, just because I want to
understand the world.
Yeah, at like a personal level rather than like taking somebody else's word for it, like understanding it firsthand kind of thing.
That's rad. Don't listen to talking heads. Find out yourself. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know where that'll go. But so, and then you said you started, you're doing two things that I find interesting. You're narrating audiobooks, or doing the audio work for the audiobooks. And you were talking about a little bit about that, but why don't you just talk about more what that is? Because I imagine I'm not the only one that thinks that's an interesting job to have.
Not a job, as my dad will remind me. Not getting paid.
Oh, it's volunteer work?
A nice volunteer work.
It's still cool.
Yeah.
Your dad reminds you of that.
Every time I tell him something cool is happening, he's like, how much you getting paid? 0 experience. But so the narrating the audiobooks at the library, it's a really cool program that Wisconsin puts on where for the visually impaired, so pretty much anyone who's blind, and then as time goes on, if you become visually impaired, you can sign up for this service and you can ask for any books to be read that aren't already audiobooks. Yeah. So there's a lot of Wisconsin authors, a lot of Wisconsin history that isn't a big enough book to be made into an audiobook. And so that's where we come in. And there's about 15 of us volunteers. There's a cool little recording studio in the basement of the Central Library in Milwaukee. And 2 audio professionals that you walk in, and then you go to a booth on your left-hand side, put on the headphones, and then just narrate for 2 hours.
Do you have like a director or any sort of like, are the audio guys, are they like prompting you to deliver lines or like the text in a certain way, or like to encourage you to try it a different, like they're like, okay, try it this way this time, or say that word?
Nope,
it's just all up to you.
They just say go for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then these audiobooks, that actually becomes an audiobook for like the foreseeable future that is there to be used in the library that you made
Forever. Yep.
So it's just like you're working through this list of books slowly.
That get requested.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you get any information at all on like how many people?
No, they won't even let me listen to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the service you have to be onto is for the visually impaired, and you have to be like registered as a visually impaired in Wisconsin, like on your driver's license, kind of verified.
Yeah.
And then so I've asked a couple times. I've been like, I just want to hear what I sound like and get better from it. But
it does seem weird that they wouldn't let you do that.
I know. They even asked for the book back afterwards.
Also, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that I get that it's very like a nice thing to have specifically for the visually impaired, but like, why not just have that available to anyone too? Like audiobooks are just a nice thing to have for any person.
Wouldn't that be nice to have all the Wisconsin history read for you? Yeah, like that would be nice for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, visually impaired or not.
I don't know why it has to be an exclusive program. Unless, and it's not, it's like an audiobook. I imagine they don't have limited copies available.
No, it's just on a server somewhere.
Yeah. That's weird.
That is
still
weird.
Cool, but kind of a little bit weird.
Yeah. I really wonder how it got started. It feels like this is one of those like earmarked, dog-marked programs in like the 80s or 90s, someone's pet project. They had like a visually impaired kid, and they're like, a senator did. It was like, we need to make this possible for everybody. And then it's just kind of snowballed and become this beautiful thing that's continued since then.
Yeah. You said like 15 people?
Yeah, about 12 volunteers.
Oh, okay. How much of your time does that take up?
2 hours a week.
Oh, okay.
And I practice in the mornings.
So are these like, are you completing a book a week? Are these like short books, or are you long?
It takes like a month or so.
Oh, okay.
A couple months. Yeah. First one was a Jerry App's life, the country boy, something with the country boy life in it. And it talked about him growing up on a dairy farm, a small Wisconsin dairy farm from 1935 to 1945. And that was really interesting just to like listen to. Although I love Jerry App, so I'm not going to shit talk his writing, but it was a little hard sometimes. It was my first audiobook, and I'd be like, man, am I messing up or is he messing up?
Like writes in a way that's hard to speak?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like how I would talk.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because he's 85 years old, so
yeah.
Fair enough.
I actually run into that problem with my own writing sometimes, weirdly enough. Where like,
oh yeah,
I write in a certain way and then I speak in a different way. So it's like if I write myself, for instance, a script for a video, and then I read it later, sometimes I'm tripping up over certain things. So then I change them like during the actually audio recording process rather than the writing process. Because for instance, this is like a specific word that is hard for me to say when I'm reading it is probably. Like I write that a lot.
Probably.
But then when I'm reading it off of a script, I notice that I like blur it. I say like probably or like
yeah, you're right.
And I'm like, no, I want to say it like properly, like probably. But then it takes extra effort. So it's just like, I'm just going to remove that word entirely from the script.
And just skip it.
And just say a different word, like likely. That's easier to say. So I don't know. It's like weird that a person wouldn't write in their own voice.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find that I write in my own voice. And when I read somebody else's copy, I'm like, oh man, you don't talk right.
Yeah.
But then I read my own, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's still easier for me to read my own writing than it is somebody else's writing, but still it's just like not a perfect mesh, which is, a little bit weird.
What are the scripts you're recording?
Oh, so okay, along with podcasting, another one of my creative endeavors that doesn't get any views, but I do it for the self-improvement and for the
girls.
And yeah, for the girls. Is just making like videos. Some I make where it's the like, I'm in front of the camera and I'm just talking to it. They're usually about like philosophy or like critical thinking or so cool. I don't know, logic, that kind of thing. And then I put them up on my YouTube channel. Some of them though are like quote unquote animated.
Oh yeah?
It's not necessarily animation, but I fill the whole video up with drawings, pictures, text, rather than like I don't appear in it physically at all.
Oh, cool! Like an after school
video. Yeah, and those actually I find perform better. People just don't like seeing my face. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just the type of
I
video
like
that
your
I'm
face.
making.
Looks pretty normal to me.
Type of video that I'm making, perhaps it's like it's like educational kind of. It's not like straight up educational. I don't think a teacher would want to show it in their classroom, but it's more in that category. Maybe it seems like a lot of YouTubers who make educational content do it animated
Yeah,
rather than in person.
that's what I've seen too.
So maybe it's just that genre is more popular for that. So that when somebody sees a in-person video that's about some topic that they're going to learn something, it turns them off. I don't know.
Yeah. What's the channel called?
It's just my name.
Nice.
So it might be hard to find because it's just my name and because I have 1,000 subscribers. So it's like, although that is,
that's pretty good, I think.
well, I think for like a personal goal benchmarks, I think so.
Yeah.
And because I'm excited, because I just was able to remonetize my YouTube channel. And I say
What were you saying before?
because they changed the rules for monetization on YouTube in like 2018 or something, where it used to be literally anybody could just have their videos monetized. So whatever views you get, you'll get ad money on those. And like, it's probably going to amount to a couple cents for just most people who are posting for the first time and getting 7 views. But if you happen to get a viral video, then it'll be like a couple $100 or whatever. And that's what happened to me. I get one video that made 200,000 views while the rest of mine were making like 100 views. So I got a couple $100 from that.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, they changed the parameters so that you can only monetize your YouTube channel if you have both of these things basically at all times. 1,000 subscribers is the minimum goal. And you also need to have 4,000 watch hours on your videos in the past 6 months. And if you don't meet both those things, then you can't monetize. And like just a month ago, I finally met both those requirements.
Congrats.
So now I've made $20 in the past month. Yeah.
Yay.
Long answer to your question. That's the type of scripts and videos that I make.
That's so cool. Me and my friend have been talking about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, just like what I was saying, what we were saying before, is it's definitely the type of thing where you enter into it, you're like, everybody, especially these days, like, I believe it's true that when you ask school children, like teachers do at their first day of class any year, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now it's the most common answer is YouTuber. Yeah. So everybody wants to be a YouTuber. Everybody's making YouTube videos. So it's definitely the type of thing, like, this is an oversaturated market. There's no way I'm going to just become successful if I make a YouTube video. So you're discouraged to even try, and it seems almost like a pipe dream to want it.
It does.
But even still, I feel like that you shouldn't let that hold you back. You should probably just, not you specifically, just whoever should make YouTube videos anyway, for that same purpose of learning, getting good at things, and like getting better at video making, writing, speaking, whatever it is that you're doing.
I was even thinking, you were talking about these videos being like political or like cognitive, how you think, history.
Yeah.
Even just writing those down for me, I found is so important to me understanding it. And I'll come out, and if I actually make a video about it, I understand it 1,000 times better.
Yeah. And yeah, that's also not even just the writing, but like the video making process. If you're doing it about something that's in any way like about the real world, or you need to like education, like you have to do research in the video making process. Like you have to find out about these ideas that you're talking about, and just doing that is helping you a ton, learning about, I don't know, the history of philosophy or whatever it is that you're writing scripts about.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. So you haven't done that yet, though? You said
No.
you're talking about it?
Haven't done it yet.
What kind of videos would you want to make?
That's a good question. Aaron, you know Aaron.
Yeah.
He wants to make I don't really know how to say it. I won't say anything about it.
Okay.
We'll
yeah.
keep
Fair enough.
that.
It's yeah. You don't want to divulge his
I won't
information.
divulge his information. What am I doing? Parading him instead of me. What do I want to make him about? I really enjoy interviewing. I like really like that.
Yeah.
So like I would like to. I guess I'm going to wander from your question, and the next thing I'd like to do is to make an NPR style episode. So the rest of my episodes have been just like interviews with people, but I want to make it NPR-y. So you have different audio clips here and there, then you have a narrator, voice of God come in here and there and keep the story moving along. I want to try that. That sounds hard and confusing and
That does sound a lot more challenging.
intense.
So yeah, I guess we can move on to that topic because you just mentioned it. The podcast that you do, these podcast episodes, you said they're just interviews. Is it the podcast episode is an interview with one person, kind of like this?
One or two people.
One or two? Two at the same time, or would it be
two at
like,
the same time?
Okay, yeah, because NPR, that's like different interviews over the course of the whole episode, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's so much legwork.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to record 4 or 5 different times to get 3 usable clips.
Yeah.
And with just 2 people sitting across from you, you just record once.
And to give it that professional sound, you add music into it and audio effects and whatever else. Yeah, definitely a lot more work involved.
The music still scares me. The copyright.
Oh.
I'm like afraid they're gonna knock on my door and be like, what the hell, man? What the killers in your episode?
Yeah, that can be a problem with YouTube too. Is like you want to include a clip of a thing because it's perfect and it's relevant and it's great, but then you include that clip and now you can't monetize your video because copyright strike. Or if it's bad enough, if you have enough copyright strikes or if they're flagrant enough or whatever, you can actually like get strikes on your YouTube channel as a whole, and then you can have your whole channel demonetized and things like that. But there's a lot of royalty-free music, although the problem there is a lot of times it's not good. Or I've actually noticed this with certain, like there's it's like this composer named Kevin MacLeod, and all of his music is like on some sort of royalty-free music website. And there's this one song called like Monkeys Spinning Monkeys, and it's really like light and like silly sounding. And I hear it all the time in YouTube videos. So it's like, you don't want to use the music that is just everywhere.
Everybody's using.
Yeah. Okay, so your podcast.
I'll have to listen to that. I'm gonna start checking for that sound and see if I can hear that sound.
I used it in one of my videos. And then from then on, I was like, wait a minute, it's in there. I just saw it so many times. Oh, okay. But yeah, the podcast that you do, so the DSA podcast. Would you like to explain away on that one?
Oof, give the elevator pitch. Milwaukee DSA podcast. It's called Cream City Social, which I really like the name, Cream City Social. This got started probably 2 years ago by people not me and not the people making it now. When it started, it was going to be just an outreach of DSA, a way to get people involved and make people feel part of the community. And so that's what it was for a year and a half. And it was really good. Scott, Eric, and Anna Mae are the ones who did it. And hats off to them. They built something beautiful. But then they decided to take a break this January, so 6 months ago, has an episode called The Big Announcement, which I thought was pretty clever and fun. And then the big announcement was that they're stepping away, and they were going to make their own podcast, which hasn't quite come into fruition yet. But if you're ever searching Apple, any of the podcasts in the next 3 or 4 years, Google or search Seize the Mics and you might find it. But what it was is the DSA podcast started out as interviewing people from Milwaukee, and then the people that were doing it were all communication majors and media majors. And so they started going more and more in depth of how media is shaping us. And so it wasn't interviewing local people anymore, and they didn't feel great about it being kind of meta and not being on the ground. So they wanted to make their own Seize the Mics podcast in that vein.
And DSA, for people who don't know, is the Democratic Socialists of America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bernie's old party is how I like to say it.
His old party? Does he have a new party? Or is he just not?
I'm not even sure he was ever really part of the party,
Okay,
but
then
when he was running for president, he called himself a Democratic Socialist.
Gotcha. Oh, that's true. So you've been running it then for the past 6 months?
Past 6 months.
And how often do you make new episodes?
Supposed to be every 2 weeks. It's closer to every 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, that I get that for sure.
I can imagine you can get, yeah.
Like when I first started this podcast, I was like, all right, I want to post like one every 2 weeks or so, and I had that goal met for I don't know, a couple months, and then it's just kind of slowly unravels as. Yeah, like you've got maybe a core group. Well, I have a core group of people maybe who would just be on the podcast as often as I wanted them to be. But then it's like maybe I don't know. I had this rule set for myself that's still in effect, kind of. I'm thinking of maybe removing it just to get more episodes out. But the rule is I don't want the same person to be on my podcast with less than 10 episodes in between the last time they're on it. So there's guest variety.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. It's like. I only have so many friends. I only have so many close friends. I only have so many people who like I can coax into doing it without feeling bad, like I'm trying to exploit them for something, or like, hey, I haven't talked to you in forever. Want to be on my podcast? So yeah, and it's hard to keep that steam up.
I get to come at people and say, "Oh, I'm DSA. Let me interview you and let me give you your message and amplify you." So I have something to like give them.
Yeah, that's true.
You, it's like
Do you want to be on my podcast?
You want to come hang out?
I mean, I guess I could pitch it that way. I could try that. Say like, hey, you can get your views out to the world if you want.
To the Philippines.
To the Philippines, yeah. Apparently. Yeah, I haven't tried that one yet. So it's like, I think I've had like 2 months or something without a podcast up, and I feel bad about that. But it is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. I really like them, by the way.
Well, that's good to hear.
This is good.
This is a weird thing I've heard from some people. I've met a small handful of people that I like didn't know, but they were listening to my podcast. It's like, that's kind of cool. Like,
oh, that's super.
So like I meet them, like, I really like your podcast with them. Like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't even think there would be like you'd be listening to it. So that's always nice when that happens. So
that hasn't happened to me. Dang it.
So do you record here in the UWM studio?
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah. Right now we're in Goldemeyer Library at UWM, University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for you Filipinos listening. Filipinas, I don't know.
I love this. I love that 8% of your listeners are from the Philippines. That's great.
Yeah, I don't know how they collate those percentages and those rankings. Like, is it there's just a large influx of people from the Philippines who listen to one episode and that like makes it, or is it because like I don't know, are they consistently listening but only 8%? I don't have enough information to tell. But so, do you have a like through line with the DSA podcast? Is there topics that you always hit upon, or is it more guest based, like whatever they have to say?
Guest based.
Yeah.
Guest based. But I think the whole mission of it is trying to make DSA approachable to anybody. I sometimes feel like the left DSA in the political world gets very cliquey and is very, if you don't know the jargon, if you haven't read Capital, if you don't know what Marx is, if you don't say capitalism is the root of all evil, then screw you and we don't care about you.
Yeah.
And like, that's just no way to build a better world. You just can't build a better world if 50% of your people you're just writing off and saying, fuck you, because you haven't read these books.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make this approachable. And so there isn't very much political talk on there. I mean, there's most of our guests are either politicians or nonprofits working within Milwaukee. But there isn't a whole lot of jargon. And I don't really try to touch on politics. I try to talk about how can we improve Milwaukee? Like Milwaukee, the people in Milwaukee, how do we make their lives better? This is what we're trying to do.
Where's that podcast found? Where do you put it up?
Everywhere.
Okay.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and again, Cream City Social is the name.
Cream City Social. Do you put it on YouTube at all?
No, that was the next thing I need to do. I want to learn how to do After Effects in Adobe and then have it like wiggle or to the audio and have it like we have a cool rose as the thing. And so it would like vibrate if you've ever seen those before with the audio.
No, that is a good idea. Mine is just a background. But surprisingly, I do find that like a good percentage of the listens that I get are on YouTube. People apparently like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, at least some amount of people. So I think it'd be a good idea to put them up there.
That surprises me, but I think you're right. Yeah, and there's no platform. Like you don't have to have Apple. You don't have to pay for Spotify.
Yeah.
You just go to YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that aspect where Spotify is a paid service or you get ads. Do you get ads in the middle of if you're listening to a podcast on Spotify?
I don't know.
That would suck as a listening experience.
That would really suck. It's the ads on top of the ads that are already in there.
Do you have ads in your podcast? Or you're just talking about podcasts specifically for the ads?
Podcast specifically, yeah. I'm imagining
generally,
like listening to,
Yeah. Because at least when you are making a podcast and you have ad placements, you put those in during like topic breaks or whatever. So it's like you can decide the flow of the listening experience. So then if you've got ads on top of that from not being subscribed to Spotify Premium or whatever, that would...
Right in the middle of a sentence or something?
Yeah. I mean, that happens to me a lot all the time anyway. And YouTube, like sometimes there are YouTube videos that are like hours long that I end up watching or like listening to whatever as if they're audiobooks.
Sometimes on there.
Right. So that kind of thing happens. And then it's like pick up the next day and you don't even know where you are because you stopped at an ad and then it's in the middle of a sentence. Yeah. When you record, you said sometimes you have multiple guests on at the same time?
Multiple guests, yeah.
Do you split up? You do the editing for that?
Most of it, yeah.
Okay.
We brought on a sound engineer. Jess, if you're listening, I love you. You're so good. Thank you for teaching me.
Yeah. So do you split up the tracks individually then for ease of editing?
Yeah, and so the first time we did it, it all ran through this board over here, and it's a big sound board. It's got 8 channels, 16 channels maybe. Looks like something you'd see at like a venue, at a music venue for a concert. But so you plug 3 mics into there, but then it outputs all on one track. So if you talk or laugh or cough over anybody, it's total just garbage.
There's not a way to get around that on that board?
Not a way to get around it on that board.
That sucks. I've been thinking recently about getting a different Zoom Pro audio recorder. I like them because they're nice and portable and small.
Super portable.
So that wherever I end up recording a podcast, it's fine.
I also love the screen on top. So you can go outside and actually get audio, just point it somewhere and listen to it. You don't have to have a microphone plugged into it. Yeah,
that's definitely true. It's got those already there. I've used those just at testing it out. And I imagine they would be good for maybe if you're a journalist and you need to record somebody, but you're not using that recording, like in your final product, like you're writing something, so you just need to get their words so that you can listen to it back yourself later. But if you're putting that recording out into the world, I find that it's like global sound. It picks up everything.
That's what I found too. It wasn't good whenever I listened to the stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't used anything from them.
I was testing it out, so I just like talked. I had a conversation with it was like me and my girlfriend or something. I just put it in the room, and it was like birds outside chirping, picking up like just as much as their voice. I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for that. I need to get some actual microphones specifically for it.
The windscreen works pretty well. There's a big fluffy mustache looking thing that goes on top. Yeah. That helps quite a bit.
But I want to get one different audio recorder that can do, I could do like 4 to 6 inputs.
Which one? Is it the H6?
H6, or I think
want that one.
There's a different one that I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, the H6 was the one I was looking at. I think it has 6. Or is it only 4?
I think it has 4, and then they count these top 2 things as 2.
Right. That's probably the one I was thinking of then. The H6. Because then I could do multiple guests on my podcast. I technically could right now, but I want the audio tracks to be separate for editing. So I don't really want to do a splitter or anything like that.
Are you a UWM student?
Mm-hmm.
You can check them out downstairs. That's what I was using for the longest time. They have the newer version of the one that you're using right now. They have 4 of them downstairs.
The H6 or the
H4.
Oh, okay. The new version of the H4.
Yeah.
Okay. But they still have the same amount. Yeah.
Same amount, but I've done it before where you just have, you have 2 recording devices.
Oh, that's a good idea.
They play at the same time. They're a little bit off sync whenever you go back and edit them, but clap a couple times and you can
that's true.
Put them in sync.
Because one thing I've been wanting to do is have like 3 guests on at once, like 2 guests on, because trying to get more guests, it seems that there's at least a few people I know who want, it's like you have a friend, but I'm not their friend. So like they want to come onto the podcast, but they don't really want to come to the podcast without you because you're the one they know. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to just have you both on. I don't currently have that capability, so I'm looking forward to doing that at some point. And then, I don't know, maybe it'll be a lot more of a entertaining podcast when you got multiple voices going on.
I have a hard time with that. I feel like when you have more than one guest, it almost makes it hard to have a conversation because everyone's kind of waiting to talk. Yeah, and then one person kind of gets out of the conversation sometimes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that.
But maybe that's just my politicians I keep interviewing.
So, have you had any guests on recently that you really enjoyed or that were like, I don't know, outstanding in any way to you?
Outstanding. I was just editing and we're going to probably release one tomorrow. It's with Ryan Clancy and Darrin Madison. I find it so funny. People's last names are Madison and they live so close to Madison. I was dating a girl, Allison Madison, for a while. I was like, what? How is your name Madison and you live in Madison? That makes no sense. Anyway, Ryan Clancy and Darrin Madison, who are both running for state representative seats here in Milwaukee. Ryan's in the 19th district, and I forgot which one Darrin is in. But Shorewood to 35th Street. Kind of has 3 different worlds in it: Shorewood, Glenwood, and then closer to 35th Street. I guess the whole point of me saying that was that there's a little bit in there about the gerrymandering that was going on. And that kind of popped into my head. But yeah, I like talking to Ryan's been on the podcast 3 times now, and he's a county supervisor, Milwaukee County supervisor down in Bayview. And he's doing a lot of great work. I want to say he's, my humble opinion, he's definitely doing the most work on the county supervisors of any of the county supervisors.
What do they even do?
They are the ones who manage the county. So like the city councilmen run the city, and then the county is run by the county supervisors. City does pretty much everything that you see, and then, well, I should start with the county because I only know what the county does, and then everything else is the city. County does the sheriffs, the parks department, and a lot of the mental health services, the public health. So a lot of their money goes to the sheriff, the parks, and mental health.
Okay. Yeah.
Where was I going with that? He's a very good, and so we're trying to drum up support for them. They have a primary election coming up on not July 9th. That's their fundraiser, August 9th, I think, 2 months from now. And trying to get people out to come and vote for them. One of the coolest things that he was talking about is Ryan is running unopposed. So that means that he's the only one in the race, and the signatures were already due to get into the race, and no one else is going to run against him in the state representative race. That means he's going to be the state representative.
Unless I run.
You could do a write-in campaign, but you might have to get a couple more listeners. Yeah. But the crazy part about him being unopposed is that this is one of the highest fundraising districts in Wisconsin. And Democrats, and if you can think about where Democrats would be in Wisconsin. So I thought it was pretty funny. So there's 99 representatives for Wisconsin legislature. 66 of them are Republican right now. So only a third are Democrats. And if you can imagine where those third of Democrats are, Milwaukee, Madison, a little bit up north. Exactly. And this is one of the highest fundraising districts for the Democrats. Like the highest fundraising district is Ryan's district. And they decided not to run anyone in that district because they were afraid to lose to Ryan. It's like pretty mind-blowing. Ryan has the DSA's support, and DSA is very quite good at canvassing, going door to door and knocking and talking to people. And that's how Ryan got elected the first time. That's how in the last election, there's another county supervisor who's endorsed by DSA. So there's now 2 county supervisors endorsed by DSA. And this kind of political machine, if you want to call it that, but just people that go on knock on doors is basically all it is, and like talk to people about what they care about in Milwaukee, and hey, we're going to make it a better place, and what do you think we should do to make it a better place? Honestly, just listening to people is what it is.
Yeah.
And they're so afraid, the Democrats in Wisconsin were so afraid to lose to Ryan again that they didn't run anybody, and so he's running unopposed.
That's pretty cool. Kind of weird.
Kind of weird. Yeah. Like pretty weird and a little undemocratic that no one's running, but how funny.
Yeah. Do you go to the DSA meetings?
I do.
I mean, I don't know. I find that interesting too. I've known some people who, I don't know, would align themselves with DSA or have gone to DSA meetings, at least in the past, or some that still do. Could you, I don't know, explain for anybody who isn't aware, or even people who kind of are, like what it is the DSA is all about?
Equity, I think, is one word to like sum it all up. It's a socialist, so basically it just means reorganizing the way that we live our lives, not making it all about money. Eliminate the profit motive and have everything that we do, all the decisions that we make, all the businesses that we make, have it to serve people. When you're looking for outcomes, it's not how much money are we going to make, is this profitable? It's how many lives are we going to improve with this? Is this going to make someone not feel good? But restructuring the world so that it is not money driven, but human needs driven.
Yeah. So then is something like, what are they called? B corporations? Those,
What's that?
Oh, okay. So basically, if you are a B corporation, if I'm having my terminology right, it might be, I think it's a B Corp, then you're a company who basically has like pledged, like it's like 1% of companies are this or something. Yeah. You pledge to basically make profit, not your goal, but to make like improvement of like the lives of humans, your goal. Uh-huh. So then like they all have some sort of agreements to, pay their employees like really well and to like actually treat them well and stuff. And a lot of them are unionized. Basically, it's from my perspective, it seems to me like as close to socialism as you can get while still being capitalist. Also, like, being a company that is making profits.
That is surviving in this world.
Yeah. But like that's like your secondary goal. Well, I was gonna ask if that's something that would be endorsed by DSA, but I don't know if if it's not because we were talking about before about how sometimes people in that realm, or really in any realm, there's these groups, these parties that form.
It's just human nature, to be honest.
Yeah, you form your in group, and anyone else is not good enough for you. They're your enemy. So I was wondering if something like a B corporation is socialist enough or not socialist enough to be I don't know, looked up to.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like an improvement of what we have today, so I say go for it. But
yeah, that's I guess speaking of like politics in general, some issue that I run into with conversation sometimes is like if there is something that's an improvement on the current system, but isn't like everything we could have ever hoped for, people reject it just because it's not the full move all the way to the goal, and that always strikes me as really frustrating, where it's like, you'll accept nothing less than perfection, I guess, in some people's case. It's like, well, how are we supposed to get there if we don't take the steps?
If we don't take the steps, the thing that's popping into my mind is that it's context, right? Like, I think everything is individuals, humans, and context. Put those together, and then you get the world around you. And the context is like the thing you're talking about, moving a step forward. Context, is that step forward going to continue stepping forward afterwards towards what we're doing, or is that step forward a limited hangout? Is that step forward a concession that, if you want to use the dirty word, capitalists are giving into? Pressure has been given, they're giving into because they know they can hold the line at that next point.
Gotcha.
And I think that's where a lot of people get those feelings of saying, no, we need it all right now.
Yeah. I guess even still, when it's like, the company or whatever it is, the society at large is willing to give a little bit, but then they're definitely not going to get allowed any more than there. Sometimes like maybe you should just take even that, because I feel like in the next generation it'll be pushed further.
It.
Right. Yeah. So
like that, yeah.
If you like protest against any sort of change because it's not change enough, then I feel like sometimes you're shooting yourself in the foot. But yeah, I don't know. I could be wrong on that one. I find myself usually more moderate than a lot of the people that I'm surrounded by.
So. Me too.
So I guess we can go back and forth between topics, but that was the other thing that we were going to talk about a little bit with politics. And you said in politics and what they mean to people. What is it that you meant by that statement exactly? Like,
did I say that just now?
No. When we were texting about when we were texting about topic ideas long before this.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been too long, but yeah.
Politics meaning a lot to people. Yeah, I feel like politics has become a personality. It's become a consumer thing that you can buy, and you can become a Democrat or a Republican or root for a team. And now our sports teams is Republicans versus Democrats that we're rooting for. It's like, these are just teams. These are not, this is again choreographed. This is a sports team that you have no impact on. It is like cheering for the Cubs or the Brewers. You got no impact. Yeah. And once you realize that you have no impact, you can let go of those angry feelings that you get when you scroll Facebook and see the conservatives are going off and taking babies away and stuff like that. It's just like, it just doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
These politics aren't real.
Yeah.
As they stand right now.
Yeah, tying everything so close to your identity and who you are as a person, rather than, I guess, I don't know, caring about what you can actually do. Yeah, I get that.
Or just when they get so wrapped up in caring about it, and they're posting and they're all about it, and they feel like they're really doing something, but they're not going out and canvassing for these candidates.
Right.
They're not going to nonprofits and serving soup at a soup kitchen. They're just posting.
Yeah.
They're just consuming.
Yeah, that kind of thing does get to me sometimes. It's like sharing a political message, or even really any message online, especially on a place like Facebook. Like, what does that really accomplish? Usually I find that it accomplishes nothing, or it actually accomplishes the reverse of what you wanted to accomplish. Like, people get into these arguments online over some political disagreement, and then at the end result is these people who they now just disagree more with each other than they did originally. And
now they think the other side hates them and thinks that they're total
Now they come up with, I guess turns out leftists are even worse than I ever could have imagined.
Antifa's everywhere. Holy shit.
Yeah, they're on
talking to one on my Facebook
friends.
page. Yeah, River West Neighborhood page.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And there's definitely, like, you're talking about going out and canvassing and actually having those in-person conversations. there's obviously, like, I feel like everyone kind of intuitively knows this, but there's something much different about an in-person conversation where it's like
It's
harder
human.
to alienate the other person, harder to make them into your enemy, harder to misinterpret them, and like it's just easier to actually have a reasonable discussion and like listen to each other when you're 4 feet away from the person instead of, virtual.
Yes, there's so many times we've been canvassing for a We Energies campaign, and it's kind of public. I don't know. Maybe the Philippines don't care. It doesn't matter. But anyway, municipalize, the city would buy back the We Energies campaign and run it as a city thing. We're knocking on doors, trying to talk to people, get their feelings about if they would like that, to have it a city-owned utility. Rates would get lower. That's what the research I was doing, and I really believe that they would. But we talk to people, and I'll knock on doors, and I'll lead with, I want to talk to you about We Energies. And I'll say DSA, but I'll say it kind of quickly or whatnot. And I'm not sure it quite registers what that is, but they say We Energies, and then I'm just smiling and trying to be friendly, and so they just start talking to me. And then they'll talk, it'll be real nice. They'll point at the solar panels. They'll say their neighbor down the street has solar panels, and We Energies raised the price, or actually dropped the price on how much that they give for their solar panels, and now they'll only buy back 20 watts instead of 60 watts that we thought it was, so the whole financing doesn't work out for us anymore, and I'm actually losing money off this. And they'll just go on and on, like tell me about their actual problem. It'll be like really great. We're having a great conversation, like getting down to it. And then at the very end, they'll be like, yeah, what are you doing this for again? I'll be like, oh, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. And you can just sometimes see their face just drop.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, thanks. And then walk back inside. But I'm a human, and they can't hate me until I'm right in front of them.
Are you normally going to houses, or do you ever go to companies with
Houses.
Yeah.
Only houses.
Only houses. Okay. Yeah, I wonder if they immediately would think that you work for We Energies or something.
That's what they sometimes do, yeah. And we were on Humboldt, and have you seen how Humboldt's all tore up? The We Energies is putting in new pipes or something.
Oh, okay. I didn't
like
know
that.
that's what they're doing, but yeah.
I'm not sure what they're doing. It's been like 9 months or so.
Yeah.
But we were knocking on those doors, and they thought that we were all with We Energies, taking surveys of, how do you feel about We Energies? And they're like, well, I wish this construction would get done. You should tell them that. And I'm like, all right, I'll send them a little message. That,
I also wonder if they assume that you're from We Energies, if they're more likely to talk good about it or bad. Like if you have a representative of a company right in front of you, if that, like, I don't know, scares you into,
I think it scares you into being more positive towards them.
Yeah. You don't want to like start swearing at you, like, I hate your service, you're awful. You're like, oh, it's fine. And, like, I don't like having the road not usable.
And also at the same time, it's your only source of electricity in Milwaukee. So if you really piss them off or get on the list of We Energies, like, fuck this guy, fuck this address. You can imagine.
Yeah, that specifically has horrified me for years. We Energies, but also like internet companies. And like sometimes a duopoly, but in a lot of cases, like on specific blocks, a monopoly. I feel like there's this kind of cooperation that Spectrum and AT&T have, where they split up city blocks. They're like, okay, Spectrum has this block, AT&T has this block. So if you live in an apartment right there, you only can get one or the other. You don't have a choice between competitors. You just like, I'm going to have internet, and the service is going to be absolutely shitty. And I mean that in terms of like internet service and customer service. And then, when they just up my rates every year, nothing I can do about it, because what am I going to do? Not have internet?
Not have internet. And then you think about them raising the rates all the time. I'm just like, stop sending me mailers. Oh. Stop mailing me stuff. If you just saved on postage, you could easily keep my rates at the same place.
It's ridiculous how much Spectrum
like once a week.
had to get, yeah. And then half of them are in Spanish, like, just in case, I don't know.
Just in case you've changed in the last little bit.
Yeah. And then they always want me to get Spectrum cable, and it's like, I'm literally never, ever going to get cable. Who is?
Stop asking me. Anyone under 30, no one's going to do it.
Yeah. I don't even get why anyone at all has cable.
My parents still have cable. It's kind of nice.
Do they use it? Like, on a regular basis? Do they actually watch the TV?
Yeah.
Okay. They're getting the
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school or something, my mom was complaining to me about how much cable costs. Because it was, apparently she was like, they were raising the rates, and it was like to an astronomical, at least I didn't know what it was, I don't remember. But to her anyway, it was like unaffordable. It's kind of sad, because at that time, it's like, what are we going to do? Not have cable? We're just going to pay for it. But now it's like changed so much that if I was in that same position now, I'd be like, just stop paying for the cable. I don't care. We'll
get Netflix, Hulu, and HBO, and we'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, like 12 years ago, it's like, I gotta have my cable.
Yeah, you gotta watch TV.
Yeah, that's
funny.
You said that with the research you were doing, you were predicting that the costs of energy would actually go down.
Yeah.
If it was a city service.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of or remember from that any other benefits that there might be, or is it mostly about the cost?
The cost is what I was selling it as, because I thought people who weren't bought into the idea of cooperation. So the other benefit is that we have accountability now. Like, it would be city run. So city run. So if the rates were going up, we could go to our representatives, aldermen, and say, hey, what the frick?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And we would have a say in it. Right now, it's a private company, and it just goes to the Public Service Commission, which does regulate it, but rates have been increasing. They've increased 20% in the last 10 years. It's more than that, but I can't remember quite what the numbers are. But it just increases every year, and utility companies are incentivized to build out. So when you get regulated by a Public Service Commission, you get to make profit on your capital expenditures. So not the people that you pay or anything like that, but any new power plants that you build, any new lines that you put in, you get to get a 10% return on that, give or take, whatever it may be. And so that 10% return is how they make their money. And that's how We Energy stock price has increased 200% in the last 10 years. Like, just way outpaced the market. And it just doesn't really make sense that a thing that we're all paying for gets to increase in value like that.
Yeah.
And so the way that it becomes cheaper is that the 10% that they get back on this capital investment, that's to pay the shareholders. That's to be competitive with the stock market. So stock market goes up 8.5% a year or 7%, whatever you want to say that is. That's where that 9.5% is, so that the stockholders, the shareholders, feel like they're getting an investment, so that they'll keep putting capital in, so that the We Energies can keep building new capital things like power plants and transformers. But so if it's a city-run thing, you don't have shareholders anymore. You don't have to match the market. You don't have to make 10% back on all of this capital expenditure.
Yeah.
And you're not incentivized to do so. You get access to municipal bonds, which is how you pay for roads, how cities pay for anything, really big capital projects, sewers, water treatment, plants like that. And these bonds only have a 4% interest rate. So if you're imagining 10% interest rate versus 4% interest rate, you think about how much, if you've ever looked at mortgages, a couple points in that percentage points is like hundreds of thousands of dollars over 30 years. Same thing here. You get to cut out 20% of the total bills by taking out that huge 10% that they get back on all the money that they invest to 4%, so that we're only building exactly what we need when we need it.
Yeah. And I imagine it's much more environmentally friendly too, because like you just said, you don't have that incentive to always grow and always build more power plants and always keep just increasing that stock price. So you can just, stop once you meet the needs of your city, and then you have no more further cost on the environment by just always in growth.
It'd be like having a paid off house.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get to live in your house for free now. That's nice.
Yeah. Especially like, you would imagine if, it's like a city-run thing and they're not really in it for the profit, they're just in it for the service, that they would be more incentivized. Well, I don't know, maybe equally incentivized. But either way, they'd be incentivized to probably find cheaper ways to do it, or like solar power, or like whatever it is, to offload the price from the taxpayers, or so that they can take that tax money and put it elsewhere rather than putting it back into their electricity. They could just, pay for that by itself, like, circular economy kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly what you're saying. Cincinnati does that. So any money that they get extra from their utility, publicly owned utility, goes into the general fund.
Yeah.
General fund goes to schools, goes to roads, goes to bridges.
Cincinnati, is that like an outlier, and is it the only city that does that?
No, there's actually a bunch of them does. Austin, Texas does. I'm pretty sure it's San Francisco or it's LA. I can't remember which one. There's quite a few of the big cities that have them.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, we should definitely adopt that.
And they actually
model.
go really well. Yeah. Omaha is one of the best. That was the one I was looking into the most.
Wow. And I imagine, or I hope anyway, they don't have or they have fewer power outage problems. It's
half.
Not like half.
It's half, because again, they're going for reliability. They're not making a profit on building more power plants.
Yeah, they want their citizens to be happy.
They just, because
then people, will riot or whatever it is, protest.
Keep voting for the same people.
Yeah, vote them out of office. Yeah.
I like the riot and protest. Your mind's going. That's good.
Yeah. One question I want to ask you before, because this guy just popped up in my consciousness from other friends, because you said you had a few politicians on your podcast and you talked about those two guys that stood out. Have you heard of, or even have you spoken to, Tom Nelson?
No.
I wish I had the brochure in front of me. One of my friends just gave me a pamphlet and left them at my apartment of all the stuff, all the ways that Tom Nelson's the guy you should vote for instead of definitely not Ron Johnson, but vote for over Mandela Barnes or Sarah Godlewski or whatever. One other candidate. I don't remember the guy's name.
I don't remember either, but yeah.
But yeah, apparently Tom Nelson is, and they're all like socialists or even communists.
Wait, who is?
My friends that
okay. I was gonna say I don't think Tom Nelson should be running as a communist.
He's not. He's running as a Democrat. But my friends who would identify as socialists or communists are the ones who want me to vote for Tom Nelson. And apparently, I don't know. He's such a great choice for. I can't think of the senator.
I was gonna say Ron Johnson's a senator.
Yeah.
So if that's that seat, yeah.
Yeah, but well, I mean, maybe you could try to have him on the DSA podcast.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, that'd be next level.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he lives. It's probably not in Milwaukee, I don't think. So he would have to travel for it.
Oh yeah, this is a senator race for the real legislature, the federal one.
Yeah.
Gotcha, yeah.
So I think he lives like, I don't know, somewhere in the northern part of Wisconsin or something. Because one of his talking points are like why you should vote for me, or like why I'm a good guy to vote for, is that like he says he got elected as a Democrat despite the fact that he lives in a like Trump County. So it's like even the Republicans like him. Because I don't know, he
that's funny that your socialist friends and communist friends like that. Most of people I know that would identify that way would be like, oh, they're together. He's a Republican in sheep's clothing. What the frick? Run the other way.
I mean, yeah, I guess I could see that perspective, but I didn't take it that way.
I've seen Mandela Barnes talk before at a couple conferences. Man, he's a good speaker.
Is he? Yeah, I haven't seen it.
It's annoying how good these politicians are at talking. They just fall in love.
I mean, I guess that's most of their outward-facing job. Yeah, is to get elected and woo you over. Although I don't know, there's even still a lot of successful politicians aren't very good at public speaking. Like, or at least when I watch them or listen to them, like, who is buying this? Like Ted Cruz or like,
like
Donald Trump.
No
it's like
charisma there. Yeah,
it's like you're just kind of rambling. Really, is what you're doing if you're Donald Trump.
He'd be such a good comedian.
But yeah,
I'll stand by that. He should have just done that and saved us all some trouble.
He makes a pretty good reality TV entertainment host or whatever.
He knows how to entertain.
Yeah,
he does.
And that's probably not a great basis to elect someone else.
I just can't wait till we all look back on this and like see that we had a TV president.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Like, this is maybe unrelated, but I don't know if we will. At least we will. Like, our society might. But like,
are we getting blown up?
No. So this is what I mean. The people who voted for Trump and were like, we're really gung-ho about him in 2016. I'm not sure that those people, at least the majority of them anyway, will ever look back and say, that was a bad decision on my part. I think they'll stick to their guns until they die. And the people who never like Trump at all, of course, they'll continue to never like Trump. It makes me think of Nazi Germany. And I know like Donald Trump isn't a one-to-one comparison to Nazis or anything like that. He's not literally killing millions of people. But it's still like all the people that loved Adolf Hitler in 1930s or whatever, and then as soon as Germany gets defeated in World War II, those people still exist. Like, there's still people who were all for it, and there's the people who weren't for it but just went along because they were scared and didn't want to die. But there were a significant amount of German society that liked it, or like
at least 25%. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and it's like, what did those people do the rest of their lives? I mean, there was a lot of like German like education of people who, like soldiers, having them watch concentration camp footage, so like they were shown like what they were really contributing to. But even still, like the voters, or like people who weren't military, just like liked their current administration in the 30s, and then they just kind of lived for the rest of their lives, and they got defeated. But it's like Civil War too. Like there are people who just continue to remain steadfast in these ideas for the rest of their lives, and even for their kids' lives, and just on and on it goes in the generations. It's like, people, do they really realize that it was a bad decision to, like, we had a TV president? Like,
yeah, probably not those individuals.
Right. maybe like the society, like enough of the society is like, yeah, that was really weird of us. But there's still that sizable portion of society that like looks back on those times with nostalgia.
That's scary to think about, Wade.
Yeah.
It's scary to think about.
It's like how many people in this country still like wish that the Civil War would have gone the other way. It's kind of weird how we can't seem to learn like.
Oh God, you're right. Yeah, there's still 20% of people at least that want that.
Yeah, it's like we can't seem to learn collectively that certain ideas are bad, or like I don't know, come to more agreement politically. It's like we're very politically divided right now as a country and also kind of globally. And I don't know, it seems new, but I also wonder like how new is it?
I don't think it's new at all.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It just
Looking
maybe it
at the
feels
history.
like more present in your day-to-day life than it used to. But I feel like looking in the past, it's just like we've always been pretty divided.
Yeah, and if you go before World War II, so divided. Divided. Like the world that we have in our heads is the after World War II, where there wasn't a whole lot of world wars or big fights. And there wasn't socialist parties anymore. There wasn't communist parties anymore. But from 1880 to beginning of the World War I, 1910, 1917, it was all communist party. Like there was a third of America that were socialists and communists. So like they had a seat at the table of any representative, any committee at the federal level. There was pressure. And so, I mean, these people never got in power, but they exerted pressure on these other two parties, Republican and Democrat, to be better. Right now there's nothing keeping these two parties in check, where before you had that third party to be like, hey, if you don't keep doing good stuff, people are just going to come over here.
Yeah. How do you feel personally, I guess, about switching up the way we vote? Are you a fan of like alternative like the single alternative vote where it's like ranked choice voting kind of thing?
Yeah. That's a good question. That's one of those things that to me is so far away that I don't even like. I don't even look into to have a position, because it's like I don't have any control
Not a
over
present
that.
thing. Yeah. Although two states do it.
It sounds like the ranked voting is the way to go.
Yeah, I think 2 states do it. I think I don't actually remember what they were, but I remember realizing that last presidential election. It's like there's like a map of all the states, and like 2 were a different color because these states have a different system of voting. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
For the presidential election, it gets counted as ranked voting.
Yeah, I don't remember. I want to say like Maine was one of them, but I'm not sure.
Vermont feels like it'd be one of them.
Yeah, I don't remember, but there were 2 that do it that way, and I've been a fan of that method of voting for a while. And I think I remember something about a few referendums for it being passed around other states. So yeah, maybe not like a right now happening thing for Wisconsin, but I can foresee it in the sometime future.
And I guess I was a little quick to dismiss it before I thought about it too much. Like that structural change is what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's like
that you see 10, 15 years down the road.
Yeah. And I think that kind of change is probably the more important stuff than specific policy action, because it's like what fundamentally alters like voting and like what makes people feel like their vote actually matters more, so then more people do vote in the first place.
Changing incentive structure.
Yeah. Definitely. Rather than like, I don't know, specific like, oh, we're going to, build a wall, voting for that, instead of like, I don't know. I would be most excited to vote for a candidate of whatever level of government who is trying to actually change the structure of government rather than specific
one-off programs here.
Yeah, programs. Yeah,
I hear you.
But I don't see that all that often.
No, you don't. Ryan Clancy, Darrin, Madison, Milwaukee County Supervisor race. Primary is sometime in August.
Do you know what kind of things they're running on, or like promises or whatnot?
They don't have a lot of promises.
Yeah.
And because we were just talking about it, and it's pretty interesting, there are going to be 2 socialists out of 99 seats.
Yeah.
And all 97 people hate.
Right. Hard to accomplish.
Yeah. So you really don't get to pass legislation.
Yeah.
What you get to do there is you get to introduce legislation and have it either be voted on and voted down on. So you have all these people on record saying, I don't want to give healthcare to people. I don't want to expand this program that's keeping teens out of jail. I don't want to do this. And so you get them on the record. And so it's like a long voting game where next time they come up for election, you get to have them
Yeah.
And you get to go at them on this. And then on top of that, you get to be in the news. You get to try to reframe your arguments. And so you have a name. You're a representative now. And so he talks a lot about reframing our arguments instead of keeping it Republican versus Democrat, trying to frame it as human instead of partisan. So bully pulpit is what they'd really use if they're in the state representatives.
Yeah.
But on the local level, Ryan's been really great about jail reform. I should talk more about that, but I don't have it. I don't want to ramble on.
No, that's... Would you describe yourself as a socialist?
When I'm at DSA, yes. When I'm not there, probably not.
Okay.
I just want to make the world a better place, if I'm
Right.
being honest. And socialism seems like it's the best thing right now. But I'm pretty sure that socialism is not going to be the answer if and when a better future comes.
Oh, okay.
Can't believe I just said that out loud. But it feels like it's lost, you know? The propaganda war has been won and fought, and socialism lost in the 60s, lost in the 70s.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always been kind of a mix and matcher, I guess. Like,
It should be human. It doesn't have to be one way or the
right.
other.
Yeah, just like one group of ideas to go off of. It's like, take some from there, take some from here. Because, I don't know if, like, the idea of some sort of utopian future built on one concept, like one governmental idea, like this is going to be capitalism, we're going to do communism. Like, I don't know if that's really all that possible to just run it off of that solid, like, specific playbook and have it work out. I feel like they've all got some sort of flaws that you got to adjust it as you go.
And those definitions are so broad.
That's true.
You're like, what do you mean by capitalism? What is socialism even?
Yeah.
So, and it means so many things to different people. Like I keep meaning to do an episode, and I want to do an episode for it, and just ask people, what does socialism mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Even in DSA, I'm positive we're going to get different answers from almost every single person.
Yeah.
Because it means something to everybody.
That's another problem that I've been running into too, is like people that I know that call themselves communists, call themselves socialists, whatever it is, call themselves Marxists. It's like, I can't find a single solid
Give me a
definition. It seems, and I mean, I guess to some degree you have that with like everything. Like there's always some sort of fluidity in definitions in the first place. But I don't know. It's like, how am I supposed to, especially people who like, I don't know, want to convert me, so to say.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I supposed to be converted if like, I don't even know what I'm converting to completely.
So what would you call yourself?
I don't know. I usually try not to, but I guess if I had to, I would say I am left leaning and maybe like somewhat socialist, or like
There we go.
democratic socialist might be a general fit, but not like completely. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't call myself a communist, but I know to a lot of people communism and socialism means the same thing.
I know, this was so confusing. I was going to ask you, does that mean different things to you? It almost means similar things to me.
Oh, it does. In my mind, they're different. In my mind,
actually,
it's
yeah,
like
they do, yeah.
it's like socialism is like on the path to communism, but not all the way there. Like, because a lot of people, one of the things, not everyone, of course, like I just said, it's never everyone, but one of the things that people say to me about communism is that it is a society, or it's a world without money. Like, there's no currency there.
Yeah.
And when I think of socialism, that's not part of it.
You're right. Yeah. Socialism is still operating on markets.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Right. So, like, when I imagine the types of political ideas that I like, it's some elements of capitalism involved still, some elements of communism or socialism. So some mix of the two. And I don't know what percentage. It might be like 60-40 more socialism than capitalism, like 70-30, something like that. But I don't hate on capitalism 100% of the way. Like, I know a lot of people do.
I know. I hate saying the word.
Why?
I just hate it. It sounds like you're some professor prick saying capitalism is the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude, we all know. We all watch the YouTube videos. Capitalism sucks.
Yeah, I've seen all the documentaries.
But we're still living in it. So like, we're all still a part of it. So you can't say it sucks that bad, because everything you have is because of it.
Yeah. I guess that is true to an extent. And I don't know, I guess like, for instance, when it comes to things like universal health care, I want that to exist in this country, but I also don't know if I would want that only that to exist. So I think I'm fine with the idea of choice, where you always have a backup of the thing that's still high quality, that's a government option of like a service that's free.
Sets the standard,
right,
for what everything else should be at a high standard.
And then if you want to, you can also pay for other services or like competitors, I suppose. Because I don't know, I think one of the things that obviously is not inherent to capitalism, it's always existed, but like the idea of competition, I think is a good thing, at least roughly.
On a human level, like how do you grow? Is when you get stressed, when you're in competition either with yourself or with somebody else. That's how you get better.
Yeah,
that's how anything grows.
I mean, there's definitely a point where you can take it too far, you can like get toxic about it, but I think generally speaking, competing, like I wouldn't really want monopolies to exist, whether they're private company monopolies or like governmental monopolies. Like I don't think I would want,
even for the general services, like electricity, phone.
I guess it depends. I'd have to see, but I don't know, because with like internet service, I really dislike the monopolies we have right now.
Private company though.
Private companies, would I like those better if they were still a monopoly but like government run?
Do you like the sewer system?
I do like the sewer system.
Do you feel like you pay a lot for water?
No.
That's what it would look like.
Right. Yeah, in that way it's a very good thing. But then it's like, for instance, the what's the government agency called that Ajit Pai runs with the net neutrality?
EPA?
No, it's not the EPA. It's like FCC, is it?
There we go.
Okay.
FCC.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it affects the private companies, of course, but there's at least some sort of room for back and forth legal arguments to happen. But like if, for instance, FCC or Ajit Pai is trying to enforce net neutrality and he has more direct control of the internet, then it's just like it happens. And then you got to fight against it over time in the courts, rather than like if there's some sort of private company involved in the internet, they fight it first. I don't know, just like having control over media and information is where it's more concerning.
You don't want the government in control of that.
I don't know who I want. I don't really want anybody in control of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But like water, obviously, like if I don't have water, I'll die, or if like the water's poisoned, that's bad. But I feel like the incentives for that are definitely smaller if you're government provided water for like killing your own citizens or whatever, or like. But then I feel like it's easier and more likely to have restrictions that I'm uncomfortable with on internet access.
We're almost talking about two different things here, though. So what the FCC is a regulatory agency,
right?
Not an owner. And so it'd be like, I think an owner, like the city owning the water, would be like North Korea, where there's only 2 news stations, which would be very bad.
So then I guess what you're saying is there would still be some sort of conflict that could arise between the city distributed internet and the FCC trying to enforce rules on the internet. Like they could still fight against each other rather than it just being an automatic process.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, if that was the case, then that sounds fine to me.
I guess
I'm just worried about
the FCC, though. Like you have control. Like we could vote. Like if we had real control.
Right. Yeah.
Which we don't, but.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess that's the case too. It's like the more our vote matters and the more democratic we become, then the more comfortable I am with governments having the control over things, because
it's hard to convince people of. Yeah, exactly. We live in a world where me and you have only seen government suck.
Yeah.
Our whole lives. We've never seen America be really great at anything. And so we have no faith in this system. We have no faith in institutions.
Right. Yeah.
And so when we say, let's democratize this, let's have the city own it. It's like, well, the city has a lot of potholes and a lot of the city stuff sucks. And it's like, yeah, it has for the last 30 years. You're right.
Yeah.
Like, but what we need is a real change, like real people, like I guess politicians who aren't in that class. And I guess I want to say on my soapbox here for a second, one thing I've learned in this podcast that's really interesting is that I've always thought that elites kind of have their own political class. Like me and you don't know senators. I guess now I do, but I didn't know that before I started doing journalism and political stuff.
Yeah.
Like no normal person knows somebody they went to school with that became a representative or became a politician.
Right.
You have to be from certain families and certain stuff. And I always kind of felt that way, but I couldn't quite, that seemed too conspiratorial for me to really hold on to, It was like, geez, man, come on, stop watching Fox News. And, but the more I'm learning about it, It is true, and it's systematic. These jobs, all the federal staffers in Washington get paid $22,000 a year. So if you're supporting any representative, any senator, that's all of them, all their support staff, you get paid like $20,000, $30,000 a year to live in DC. No normal working person could have that job. The only people that get to have those jobs are rich kids with parents that'll pay for them to live in DC, and that $30,000 doesn't mean anything to them.
Or they're accepting bribes from lobbyists.
That would probably be the other case. Yeah, exactly. The other bad incentive. And so like we are pre-selecting all of our representatives out of a class of people that already have money, that are already secure and don't live the daily life of the 90% of us.
Yeah. And this is actually, for a moment in my mind, it seems problematic because I don't know if I like the opposite end idea either of like paying all government employees really well. It seems like...
How come? I'm with you. I had hesitations for a while, but...
Well, I don't know. It seems kind of like it
should be out of the good of your heart that you're doing it?
Right. At least it's the wrong incentives too. Like you wouldn't... I guess maybe you would because doctors do this, so who knows? My argument might be falling in on itself right now. Because like doctors are paid really well and they're still providing a great service. But from first thought, it seems to me you wouldn't want people to go into government because they want to make good money. Like,
yes, and that's where I think you make their salaries like a professor's salary or
right.
like an $80,000. So you could support a family and have maybe a nice house.
Yeah.
But...
Or the other idea I was about to say is maybe this would fix the problem. And maybe it's unrealistic because in my mind it fixes too many problems, but is UBI. Because if you had UBI where no matter where you live or whatever, like in the country, you're going to be fine, then it doesn't matter what job you go for because whatever job you go for, you'll still have that base income that'll keep you alive and keep you happy. So if you want to go for a senator job and it only pays $22,000 on top of your UBI, that's fine. You don't have to be rich. You can do that. Do you see any problems with that though?
No, I was just thinking like, I think that's where this is all headed. Yeah,
I hope so.
I think that's the only way that this system can keep going. Like the people in power can keep staying in power is if they let people still consume, but give them the money to consume. Oh, because we're getting to a point too where like people can't consume anymore.
Yeah.
We can't buy all these things that they're producing. The system is going to not have enough grease in the wheels and come to a stop because it's going to hit a recession or a big depression. The way you stop that is you just continually give people money.
Yeah, definitely in favor of demand side economics rather than supply side, giving money to the consumers rather than to the producers. And that's maybe one of my first, well, I was going to say one of my first stepping stones to realizing a more socialist leaning, but that's not true. I've kind of had leanings towards it for a while. In my economics class in high school, we had to write like, just some simple paper on either the pros and cons of capitalism, socialism, or communism. And I guess maybe that's a contributing factor why I imagine socialism and communism are different because really my whole life they've been kind of taught to me as different. And I think nearly everyone in the class chose capitalism, of course, because that's like teachers like nudge, nudge, do it on capitalism because we like capitalism. But I chose socialism just because I was interested in it. So I guess I've always been more socialist leaning for a while. But UBI is definitely a strong pusher in that direction as well.
Does that get us socialism?
I think it's maybe not all by itself, but I think it's definitely a strong step away from pure capitalism.
I mean, I guess that's like a universal safety net.
Yeah.
That is the welfare state. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, if your UBI was comprehensive enough, then you basically could have UBI you could have universal health care without even implementing it just through having UBI.
I was going to say.
Or whatever other safety net feature you want. You could just
have it, give them enough UBI so you could pay for the healthcare.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound ideal to me, but you could do that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather have both things kind of independently exist, I guess. But yeah, the whole incentives of politicians where, yeah, like you're saying, it doesn't pay enough, so you only can do it if you're rich. And then you've also got all sorts of other stuff on top of that, like giant mega corporations that are lobbying you to pass these laws, and then that's boosting your own political career because you've got all this funding for your next re-election campaign.
And you know that guy who knows another guy who knows another guy.
Yeah, that's the thing that needs to change, and that's like the hardest thing to change.
How do you change that? Like, I almost think by just raising the pay to like a livable wage, you could start having working class people in these jobs.
Yeah.
Like, oddly enough, I think that's a pretty closest silver bullet I have so far.
Yeah, because then, I mean, it would allow people who aren't rich to have the jobs and not, and be fine. That's their only job. They don't have to have a second job or anything. Would there still be any problems of people getting into them in the first place, though?
I was just thinking that you'd feel like the senators would pick people that they liked.
Right. And you'd still have the problem of, like, sure, you can do grassroots fundraising, but it still seems to me like the person who has the most money has the best chance of getting elected because they can spread their face everywhere. So it's still, like, in that way favors rich people or connected people anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might get us closer, but I don't know if by itself it's enough to...
No, because the politicians themselves don't really change, do they? No.
Yeah, perhaps not.
Do you like the publicly funded campaigns?
Yeah, there's few countries, Norway I believe is one of them, that basically all candidates for whatever elected office are running have the same funds allocated to them that are publicly derived, and that just like use this on your...
Use this however you will.
Campaign.
Here's $1 million.
Yeah.
Go use it. I really like that. I've heard of another way to do it where you have a big pot and then you mail people coupons. Then they're worth $50, $20, and $30. And so you get $200 or $100 in these coupons, and then you give those to candidates. Once those candidates get those coupons, then they can buy an ad with it for $20 or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so you have to have real support. You have to go knock on people's doors and you have to like get it from them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Although I still wonder that way.
Could you game that system pretty good?
Like, for instance, you're already a well-connected person. Should knowing lots of people and having a very strong social foundation, should that be what makes for a good a successful politician? Like the fact that you already have a bunch of friends.
That's tough. My first thought is yes. That is what a representative should be. Should be someone really connected with the social structures around you. But if you're rich, think of a teacher. Think of how many people a teacher knows. All the kids that go through their classes. She's been there for 10, 15 years. All the parents. And then she starts asking for coupons. I feel like that, like those social bases.
Yeah. Because
now I'm thinking about it, like rich people in the foundations and some of these dinners, there's not that many people, And when we think about them being that many people, they're so powerful because each person has a couple $1 million to their name.
Right.
There isn't that many people.
Yeah, you equalize the amount of money that each individual can spend. So then it's about the number of individuals rather than the status of those individuals. Yeah, that's definitely an improvement for sure.
Yeah.
Where you said some place is doing that?
I thought I listened to an NPR article, radio show about this 4 years ago at this point. And I thought it was Seattle, or I thought it was Portland was doing this.
And I guess the bright side of that over the thing I mentioned, the Norway thing, it was like, here's your money, use it on your advertising or whatever, is it requires like a politically engaged populace. Like you need the people, at least a certain amount of the people, to actually give these coupons
to give them
to
money. Otherwise,
Otherwise, it's just like you only need the politician himself to maybe have a few team of people who are going to spend this money on the ad spots or whatever it is, and you don't need the everyday people to be all that active in it.
Man, that would not work here.
Oh, yeah, I'd probably be abused horribly.
I'd be terribly abused. So engaged.
There's a lot of systems in like Scandinavian countries that I really like, but then it's like if we adopted that like today here, it would not work at all. For instance, how they run jails or prisons there, it's entirely about rehabilitation rather than just like punishment, pure incarceration or whatever.
Dang.
It's like, we're trying to, while you're in prison, the only thing we're trying to do, we're trying to keep society safe, but we're all like, the only reason you're here right now is just for like improvement, so you can get to a point where you become a regular citizen again and not be at risk of, becoming a serial killer once more.
Think of what a mind shift that is from the American perspective.
Yeah.
And a fundamental mind shift that any human can be made to be a normal human.
Right.
If someone doesn't have a bunch of trauma in their life, we can all be the same. To Americans, let's lock them up. They're bad people.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fundamental shift of how you view the world.
Yeah.
That is different.
Definitely the nature versus nurture thing when it comes down to it.
I've heard you talk about that a couple times on here.
Yeah. I won't do it again.
No, I like it. I'm lately on the nurture side, pretty heavily on the context side. And
Okay.
there's just so much that goes on in the interactions as a young person that it shapes you.
Specifically as a young person, you think?
Yeah.
So then would you think that the type of later life, 20s onward, rehabilitation in prison wouldn't really be that successful because you've already formed who you are from your childhood experiences?
No, I think you can figure out those. It's kind of like a person our age going to therapy.
Right.
And like realizing that their mom didn't hold them when they were young. And
Yeah.
so you feel you have attachment issues.
So, okay. So then you still think it's changeable your whole life, just foundational stuff is in your...
It's just super. Yeah.
Youth.
That's what shapes you when you're 20.
Right. Yeah.
But then you can still change that. It's just hard, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I try to, in my mind, have some balance of the nature and nurture of, like, I definitely believe in the changeability of people and the improvement of people, especially through healthy socialization. You know, if you're addicted to drugs, you can overcome that if you have strong enough social community.
Yeah. It's like, why are you addicted? Because you feel lonely and sad and no hope.
Yeah. But then I also try to keep in my mind the room for, due to your genetics, this is the spectrum of possibility that is there for you. Like, maybe you are more inclined based off of your genetics to become that addict or whatever it is than someone else. Doesn't mean you're doomed to it, but it's like the probabilities are shifted.
I think you're pretty close. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. I've always had a hard time with that though, because the genetics thing, and I watched a really cool psychologist about this, and I forgot how he said it, but the genetics thing, most of the time the genetics, you're still living in the same household as your parents. So like anything could be really learned, you know?
Although there are a lot of interesting twin studies.
That's the ones I've heard about, but I wasn't terribly convinced when I heard these
you weren't?
twin studies. They sounded, they were similar, don't get me wrong, but it was like, okay, she also likes rock music. But it's like, okay, yeah, but rock music was the biggest thing in the 60s. Of course I like rock music.
Yeah, I guess there's those culture factors too of how different really is it if you're growing up in, you know, Wisconsin versus Illinois as a separated twin. So yeah, that's an interesting factor. I'd have to look back on those twin studies to see what they accounted
do you
for.
remember any?
Not like specific ones. I read a book about this, and I'm gonna try and remember the name of the book, or I'll just pull it up because I keep a list of books.
Oh, nice. I should do that. Start keeping track.
Yeah, I list the books in my phone that I've read and that I plan on reading, so that, yeah, I think it makes it easier to remember the contents of the book if you have it listed and in the order that you read it, because then it's like, oh yeah, I read that between these books, and it puts you in the position, the context of your life and your memories. Like you can remember, oh, I was sitting in that place in this, like I read that book when I lived in this apartment. I read that book when I was, doing this in my life. So it makes it easier to remember the whole book.
I remember songs like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's especially helpful and easy when you're doing it with hearing and smelling. Despite all that, I can't remember the name of the book right now.
I would actually do really bad at that. I also work at the used bookstore in the library, and so I get to take home books. And oh my God, my apartment is just full of books right now. I always start them. Well, I pick them up and then I take them home and then I try to read them that Monday, and I get through like 20 pages of them. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Latest one was Psychology of the Deaf. So how deafness impacts how the brain develops in a deaf person.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic.
And it was a 1960s. It was a 1960s textbook. So you get to see what they thought about it in the 1960s. Super interesting. But I only made it 15 pages in, and I was like, I gotta find something else to read.
Oh, there, I found it. I mentioned this on the podcast in episode 9 or something like that. It's called The Nurture Assumption. Basically, it was written in the late 90s by a girl who, for the past like decade or whatever, had been writing psychology textbooks for colleges, and then realized like, wait a minute, I don't think the studies that they're using, or that like the data that they're using in these textbooks actually proves what they're saying it proves.
Yeah, all the time.
So then she's basically trying to start a paradigm shift for like the past 100 years, at least from where she was writing, according to her anyway. She saw that psychology was really emphasizing the nurture side of things. And there's just this assumption that nurture was like, basically most of who you are was built in your early childhood experiences. And she was saying that she doesn't think the evidence is there for that. And then she was proposing a lot of counter evidence, and a lot of it is through the twin studies, where, for instance, you've got two identical twins, and they are raised in different families, and then they end up with the same IQ, same like mannerisms, same like personality traits. So that like,
yeah, that's pretty convincing.
Despite the fact that, they're raised by parents who have these particular gestures that they use, they still use the gestures of their genetic parents, just because it's like kind of that part of their personality.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how can you say that my mannerisms are the same as my dad's? But I guess, yeah, genetics.
Right. Yeah. And so for a large time, the assumption is like, well, you learn that as a baby, and growing up in that household, seeing it happen, you learn through observational learning. And then from those studies, it's like, do you?
All right, I'm convinced a little bit. Dang it.
Yeah. But even still, it's not like, I don't think it's more nature than it is nurture. So I think there's a good balance with most things anyway.
And I guess a thought in my head too is that I'm not sure that we know how to measure nurture that well.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different, like nurture, I think, is a wider category of things than nature is. Like, it's like, do you mean childhood experiences? Do you mean life experiences overall? Like, because there's like repeating effects. There's like nature on nurture, or like vice versa. For instance, one thing that I found interesting in that book, The Nurture Assumption, is some studies and just like commentary about how sometimes parents find that their children are like hard children, difficult children. They, don't laugh as much. They don't smile as much. So then they're treated coldly.
Yeah.
And the thought process at the time was that these are difficult children because they're treated coldly. But it's like, well, you can look at it the other way. What if they're treated coldly because they're literally just harder to love? Because their genetic disposition wasn't to be bubbly and happy and like cute all the time. It was to be irritated. So then the parents become irritated at the child's irritation.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you know what to look at and like what means what?
It's not very promising. Doesn't make me very excited about the future. It's just everything is random luck. But yeah, I think you might be right.
Yeah. I mean, despite that and the fact that I think luck plays a large role in everyone's lives, I do still, like with the prison thing, I guess fundamentally believe in the like redeemability of people, or like the ability to like overcome your past misdeeds, where I feel like, like what you were saying before is American society doesn't really seem to like that idea too much.
No. You're a bad guy.
Even if this has happened, but even if there's some mishap in police investigation or like trial or whatever, where they have the wrong guy or the wrong paperwork is used. So then, this was the story. I don't remember where I found it, but so you can take it with a large grain of salt or whatever. But the story was this guy was arrested for something and jailed for a small amount of time and then released or whatever. And his paperwork was the wrong guy's paperwork, except under his name. So there was some mishap in the office or whatever. And the paperwork that was brought back, his girlfriend saw it, and it said on it that he was arrested for like pedophilia, like soliciting sex from children, which wasn't what he was arrested for. He was arrested for like, nothing having to do with that. But because of that, his girlfriend exposed him for that information, and then, he was fought back against it, and it was proven that no, that is not what I was arrested for, and that was a mistake. His negative reputation still was there, and he couldn't escape it. So like, he was fired from his job, and like basically his girlfriend left him, and he like his whole life was thrown upside down just because of a accusation of something he didn't even do. So when people really do things, there's no way that you're coming back from that.
Oof. That was making me think about the episode we did about crime reform, and how one person's interaction with the incarceral system. I think that's the jargon word we were using.
Okay.
Either way, if you get arrested, it doesn't just hurt your family. It doesn't just hurt you. It hurts everybody that's around you. One guy had his personal story of he was his dad got arrested at the age of 11 and sent to jail. I mean, and they were living in a regular house. They were living a pretty nice middle-class life in America, like most people want. And then when he went to jail, within 2 months, they weren't able to afford their house anymore, got foreclosed on. They lost both of their cars. They're having to drive up to Green Bay, where his dad was incarcerated, in these old beater cars that wouldn't make it all the way down. And there was 2 or 3 times where friends would have to drive up, or they'd take the bus down halfway through because the car broke down, and they just left it there because it was only a $1,000 car, $2,000 car to begin with. And just everybody's life blew up, you know? That ruined 7 people's lives, him getting arrested. And it doesn't make what he did right or wrong or anything like that. And he probably should have been taken out of society for a little bit and rehabilitated. But it just hurts everybody.
Yeah. It's got ripple effects. And like the cultural mentality around it is not the healthiest. We're like, I don't know. For instance, if we did view these things more as bad luck, like you were unlucky enough to have bad influences in your life or whatever it is, or bad genetic lottery, where like you're a violent person through not great fault, like no real fault of your own.
That's an interesting consequence of that. Yeah.
Like you could be, you know, taught or reconditioned to be a different way, but you weren't, so you went to prison. It's like, rather than viewing it as roughly not the fault of the person, it's like the complete reverse of that. It's like you are the master of your own fate. Everything you do, you wanted to do, and like there's some outside of the universe free will insertion that you have that you can control your body in every way. It's like there's this unrealistic accountability that we're all supposed to have, and then when you do something wrong, it's like never recover.
Yeah. How does that happen? How do we all think that we're in control all the time? Because we're just obviously not. Like, each of us has experiences where you're driving past, if you love coffee, like me, I love coffee, and I used to really love coffee. Once I have 1 cup, so I don't drink coffee anymore, but once I have 1 cup, the next day I want another cup.
Yeah.
And like I walk past the coffee store and like it's a real urge for the next week after I've had coffee. There are so many things that you're just out of control of, you know? I'll tell myself I don't want coffee, but then I'll think about it for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
There's got to be so many instances where all of us experience that kind of stuff, you
like
know?
There's these little triggers that you weren't expecting, you weren't even thinking about coffee, you were not going to have coffee. Walk past somebody who's holding a cup of coffee, the smell goes right into your nostrils at the perfect, you know, time of day, whatever. Now you're going to get a coffee.
Now I want a coffee. I was just thinking social media is the same way. You're like, I don't want to sit on here for an hour and scroll. I know that's bad for me and then that's dumb. But you're on there for an hour and scrolling.
Yeah. Obviously, we need to have some sort of sense of responsibility, so we can't just say, yeah, I'm going to punch you in the face and like, I'm not sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Where's the line?
But also, I feel like there should be more understanding in these things. It's like, I think maybe it comes from that, it's like a reaction of anger of, you know, if you do something bad to me, even though that I can intellectually realize that, you know, there were external circumstances and all these sorts of things that are outside of either of our control that cause you to punch me in the face, and maybe you might regret it a moment later, I'm still going to have this visceral reaction right away to punch you back.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just, we want to...
If someone commits a crime, there's going to be a visceral reaction to say, hey, stop.
Yeah, like the visceral reaction to like, you deserve to be in prison for the rest of your fucking life. And maybe it's not really the best thing.
Yeah. Maybe that's not best for everybody.
Yeah.
Give yourself 5 years or so to calm down. Yeah. You don't have to ruin 2 lives.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking for long enough in this episode, but where I like to end things usually is solicit a recommendation from you for what the audience, the listeners, can do. Usually it's in the form of a book if you're a book reader, but also, I don't know, maybe you're been more to TV or music lately, just any type of thing that you've been really enjoying or you think the audience would benefit from, whatever it might be.
That's a good question. Number 1, I think it's got to be Cream City Social. If you want to check out a podcast about local Milwaukee, check out all that good stuff.
Found wherever you find podcasts.
Wherever you find podcasts. And the other one, I've been learning a lot about Milwaukee's history lately, and I just find it so fascinating. there's a book at the library called A Colorful History of Milwaukee. It was written in the 1970s, and the guy claims in the very first page to not be a historian. He's friends with historians and likes researching, but he's not having sources and all of this stuff. He's reading old scripts and old things, and he's writing a colorful narrative that is true in his mind and isn't made up characters, but is a narrative of the history of Milwaukee. And it's just so interesting. And one of the points I find really interesting is that Milwaukee was built as a speculation town. So it was like created out of nothing. Like 3 guys came here. There was Kilbourne, Juneau, and Walker. So Walker's Point in the south. Oh. Juneau, there's a statue of Juneau by the pumping station over there, and then Kilbourne. And they were all just land speculators. One of them, Kilbourne, was like a real kind of I don't want to say shady. He would be the villain in the movies. Juneau would be the big, noble, strong, strapping George Washington type who was a trapper to begin with, and then got into land speculation when all the furs went away. And then Walker's a big, kind of I don't want to say a buffoon, but a big, fat, jolly man who's just kind of like a jolly fat mayor.
Quite the trio.
And they built it out of nothing. They did a whole land speculation. They sold the lots in the beginning for $1.25. And within 6 months, those same lots for $1.25 were going for $5,000. So this is like cryptocurrency. This is like that same speculation
pyramid
market.
Scheme city.
It is. And then the same thing happened. 1937 happened. After all these prices got inflated to $5,000 per acre, a recession hit. And so all those prices went back down to like $100 an acre or like $20 an acre. So just everybody lost everything. And for a year, nobody moved to Milwaukee. And it was like, oh shit, maybe this town isn't going to happen. Oh no. Then the economy picked back up. People started moving out here a little bit easier. And then it started going back up again in 1940.
Wait, so speculation like on
land.
What does that mean? Like if there's like natural resources that are valuable, or like just what are they even going off? What's their metric of why the land is valuable?
That's a good question. The city. So just the city. Like
it would be good to have a city here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just because it was so close to the water and you had the 3 rivers running out. So it wasn't like minerals or anything like that land speculation. It was legitimately just like 4 city
going
blocks.
Up like eventually a city will be here and we're going to sell you early access into it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
That's a pretty interesting concept, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always kind of thought that towns developed because there was actually like stuff of value already there. Like there's, I don't know, gold in the hills, so people set up camp. Mm-hmm. Or like, there's a lot of great farming opportunities or something like that. But no, just like there will be a city here, so there's going to be a city here.
Yeah, we're going to make a city here. I will say that it was picked for the rivers, and they really did see that this was going to be a great port. Okay. But at the time, it was all swamp, and none of these rivers were deep enough to take boats up them. So whenever the boats came here to unload settlers, they had to get on rowboats, and then the rowboats would row them into town, and then rowboats would pull up on the sand shore, and then they'd unload them. Wow. So it wasn't a great port naturally by any means.
And that's one of the books that you were doing for recording audiobooks?
No, that's just what I'm trying to read for. Okay. I'm trying to make Milwaukee history podcasts.
Oh, okay.
Part of the DSA thing, trying to write a new narrative of Milwaukee, that we built this city, we made it ourselves, and we can make it again.
Who is the author of that book?
Not a clue.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up. I'll put it in the notes.
A Colorful History of Milwaukee is what it's called.
All right. Well, do you have any other parting words before we end this episode?
This was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being on it. And thank you for listening.
We'll see you next time.